It is 4 a.m. in a quiet Iowa city where the streetlights have not yet surrendered to dawn. In an upstairs apartment, a phone rings into the dark. A young anchor reaches for it with sleep-stiff fingers, her voice husky with the hour. She promises she'll be there. "I overslept. I'm coming." She has 15 minutes to dress, to tame her hair into the smile the whole town knows, to drive the short distance to a newsroom already warm with studio lights. Outside, the summer air is thick and still. Somewhere, a single engine hums. Somewhere else, a door opens. Later, in a parking lot with pebble-gray asphalt, the ground will hold a scatter of ordinary things. A pair of shoes, a hair dryer, a card, something with her name on it. The keys bent. The spaces between objects telling a story of suddenness, of panic, of interruptions that split a life in two. The clock doesn't stop. The broadcast is coming. But she never makes it to the chair with her name on the mug. She never walks beneath the boom cameras or laughs with the weather guy or shuffles the scripts she has already memorized. Instead, the morning breaks over a city that is about to be gripped by a question more powerful than any headline. Where's Jodi? Who pulled the morning apart? What waited in the shadows of a parking lot? And how does a person step out of her home and vanish into air that is supposed to be safe? This is the story of Jodi Huisentruit, the news anchor who never made it to work. The first call is routine. Producers know every anchor's sleep patterns by heart. The second carries urgency because the red light on the control room clock doesn't care about human error. On the third, the voice at the other end is trying to be gentle. "Jodi, we're live soon. Are you coming?" She is. She says she is. She throws off the covers and the apartment floor is cool beneath her feet. She can do this. She's done this 100 times. The ritual is muscle memory. Coffee, hairspray, jacket on the back of a chair, purse by the door. She is 27 and she has learned how to dress in the dark. Her car waits just down the outdoor steps. In the silence of that hour, certain sounds become magnified. The click of a deadbolt, the press of a key against a thumb, the chirp of an engine turning over. Somewhere close, a van idles. A porch light flares. A dog lets out a single warning bark and then, as if scolded by the quiet, falls back to a whine. What happens next is only known by absence. Neighbors will later say they heard something that didn't sound right. Not a scream exactly. A sharpness, a scuffle, a thud. Somebody will think they saw a white van where there wasn't one before. Someone else will remember a shape by the car, quick and decisive. The timeline will shrink to minutes that can't be stretched back to safety. By the time the newsroom calls again, the ringing is crossing an empty room. The teleprompter is still loaded with her scripts. The red light goes on without her. What could possibly unspool a life in the space between a ringing phone and a car door? Who watches a door at 4 in the morning? Who waits? But what investigators would find next, in the oil-smelling hush of a parking lot, would change everything. The morning warms to a pale, unforgiving light. The air tastes like rain that won't quite fall. And there it is, the first scene of a mystery that has never loosened its grip. Her red car still in the space, the driver's door askew in the frame of what should have been the day's simplest routine. The keys are bent as if twisted by force, as if someone tried to turn an ordinary moment into a barricade. It is the messiness that betrays a story. A shoe here, a hair dryer there, a personal item with her name, a smudge that could be nothing and could be everything. Drag marks, some say. Scattered possessions that look like breadcrumbs and feel like a scream caught in the throat of a place that is supposed to be home. Officers tape the scene with bright bands of plastic that flutter against the morning sighs. Camera crews arrive, not for the story she was supposed to tell, but for the story of her unsaid words. A city is suddenly recast as a puzzle. Every apartment window a potential witness. Every parked car a secret. People stand on balconies in bathrobes and try to reconcile the image they know. The smiling woman who shepherded them through school closings and farm reports, with this place of interrupted belongings. Mason City is steady and reliable. The kind of town where a morning show isn't just background noise. It's the metronome of daily life. Jodi isn't just a face on TV. She's a neighbor, presence, and now a ghost in the making. Detectives kneel by the car and let their eyes adjust to details. They will swab, photograph, measure, diagram. They will trace shoe prints and listen to the asphalt's dumb memory. They will bag those keys because metal does not lie. Metal keeps the shape of violence. The day will advance and reporters will speak carefully. Missing. Possible abduction. Ongoing investigation. The city repeats these words until they lose their edges. Who brings a struggle to a place like this? How long does it take to erase a person? Why did the morning feel watched? But the answers people believe might live not in what the ground surrendered, but in the orbit around Jodi's life, and in the people who walked within it. Before the word missing swallows her, there was a life threaded with ambition and ordinary joys. Minnesota childhood and Midwest grit. College and dreams shaped into alarm clocks and early hours. In the newsroom, she is the heartbeat, the buoyant laugh, the empathic voice who can pivot from tornado warnings to a local pie contest without breaking the spell of trust. She is young and visible. Visibility is its own weather system. The day before she vanished, she laughed with friends. There was a charity golf event, a small celebration, a tape played back with her smile in it. People gathered who loved her or wanted to love the proximity of her light. It is a snapshot that will later be studied like a painting. Who was there? What did they say? Did anyone watch her too closely? Did she know? There is a friend older than her who orbits like a moon with its own pull. There are coworkers who worry about stalkers because on television you can't select your audience. You inherit it. There are letters and phone calls that sometimes linger too long on your name. There are friendly dinners that, on second look, are a touch too loud with the wrong kind of laughter. In any murder board, the rules are cruelly simple. Start with who knew her, then who loved her or thought they did, then who envied the way she took up space on a screen they could not enter. Then consider the strangers who take shadows for doors. Those closest to Jodi remember her generosity first. She made people feel seen. They remember her courage second. She chased storms so others knew when to run. They remember, too, a flicker of nervousness. Not a thing you'd cite as fear, but an instinct to check behind you when the hallway light clicks off. And yet, this was her home, her car, her morning, her promise to be on time. That promise will become, in hindsight, a flare firing upwards, marking not just when the morning went wrong, but how close she came to escaping it. Did she feel someone behind her as she stepped outside? Did she turn? Did she know the person who closed the last inch of distance? The next answers would seem to bloom from the edges of her life. From a van that didn't belong, from testimony sifted and resifted, from a city where everyone seems to have seen almost enough. The rumor comes first, a white van, ordinary, utilitarian, anonymous, the kind of vehicle that exists at every construction site and in the margins of every memory. Someone says they saw one with its lights on near the apartments around the time the world was tipping. Another recalls the hum of an engine idling like a held breath. White vans aren't suspicious until they are. They aren't monsters until the story needs a mouth. Witnesses remember pieces. A shape against a car door, a sound like an argument the air itself muffled, a figure moving fast with purpose. It is a composite image composed of human frailty. Darkness, distance, sleep-sanded eyes. Still, the city looks twice. Neighbors become archivists of their own recollections. Police canvas and the map of the morning is marked and remarked. Apartment stairs, parking spaces, a route to work. The clock is as important as the ground. If she left when she said she would, where would her car be at 4:20? 4:25? How far can a person be taken in 5 minutes? In 10? There is talk of drag marks near the car. There is talk of a palm print that might be useful, might be the shape of an answer resting invisibly on paint. There are fingerprints that flirt with the possibility of a match and then fold back into ambiguity. There are items that whisper struggle, but refuse to say who. And over everything, one fact refuses to blink. The car is there. She is not. Fear starts to stake a claim. Runners change their routes. Doors get new locks. The morning, in a farm town sense of the word, loses some innocence. The newsroom, once a place of deadlines and donuts, becomes a chapel of missing. If you're still here, subscribe, because stories like this deserve more eyes and more voices. Somewhere out there, a detail is waiting in someone's memory, and it only needs to be heard. Who drove that van? Did anyone ever write the plate number on a napkin and throw it away? And if the van is a phantom, if it was never there, what else has the city talked itself into or out of? Investigators will look next at the constellation of people around Jodi, and the gravity of those relationships will pull the case into deeper water. The rulebook is unkind. Start close. People who knew her are interviewed again and again until their stories develop the sheen of well-told tales. Friends, neighbors, colleagues. Men she knew socially. Men who admired her from distances she might not have noticed. There is a friend who had recently celebrated with her, older, attentive, fond of telling stories where he casts himself as protector, sometimes as leading man. He cooperates, he is questioned, he is never charged. Presumption of innocence isn't just a phrase here. It's a necessary fence. He leaves town later, moves states away. People will talk about him for years because stories crave a person to point to, and he is vividly drawn in their memories. There is another man with a violent past who lived not too far away. A convicted rapist whose path seems to graze the edges of her world. Some observers will align dates and street names until they form a hard suspicion. Others will remind us. Correlation is a trickster. Investigators look, probe, compare. Leads flare like matches and then go out. Nothing to charge, nothing to hold. There are co-workers who remember strangers in the lobby, calls that didn't feel right, a note left under a windshield wiper that now feels like an omen. There are bar patrons from the night before who will, in the retelling, watch a room like it was a stage. There are people who say she confided a worry, but can't quite recall the shape of it. Polygraphs are administered. Search warrants are served. Boats are towed. Outbuildings are opened and emptied of their quiet. Dogs are brought in to turn air into evidence. There is activity, and then there is the heavy quiet that follows activity when it yields no piece that locks the puzzle closed. We cling to the pieces because that's what humans do. A car, keys, a van, a timeline, names we repeat because we must, followed by caution because the law is right to demand it. No one has been charged. Everyone named remains presumed innocent. If it was someone she knew, how do you hide that kind of rupture? If it was a stranger, how did they know the hour, the door, the routine? When the circle around a life doesn't give up a culprit, the search widens, into fields and rivers, into basements and into years. People organize. The human heart refuses to outsource hope. Volunteers lace their shoes. Farmers open gates. Helicopters skim the lines where green turns to brown. There are rumors of a lake that knows more than it says, of a river that might have carried secrets. A backhoe arrives at a place someone thinks could be important. It digs and the earth gasps and then settles back, saying nothing. Sniffer dogs stir the air. A line of searchers moves across a field in a choreography of belief. Everyone is quiet in the way we are when we walk over ground that might hold an answer. At night, they meet in church basements with maps and thermoses, and the prayer without words moves over the room like a weather front. Let it be found. Let it be known. Television shows pick up the story. National audiences map themselves onto this Iowa city because a morning anchor is, in a real way, part of our homes. We've given them a place on our couches, in our kitchens. America becomes a country of neighbors leaning over the same fence, asking the same question. Evidence boxes pile up in places the public can't see. Some are full of good faith dead ends. Some hold things that would matter if we had one more piece. Forensic science advances, and with every new instrument, detectives wonder if this, finally, is the device that turns maybe into this. The boxes wait. The hope persists. The families learn the awful skill of living in a paragraph that begins with "on the morning of." There are anniversaries. There are names repeated into microphones until tears give the words a tremble you can hear on the recording. There is a bench dedicated in her honor, and in the center of town, on certain days, the breeze sounds like the past turning a page. Why does time feel like both ally and enemy? What does it mean for a city to keep a porch light on for decades? How do you maintain a search when the map now includes the whole world? And yet, Every mystery vibrates with theory. Not because theories are answers, but because they help us look. The next chapter belongs to possibilities. A case like this draws theories the way a night light draws moths. They come and they flutter, and some land long enough to make a claim. Theory 1. The stalker. She was a public figure. She wore mornings like a uniform and routines like a schedule posted on a wall. If someone watched her long enough, they would see the precise window when she was both visible and alone. A stalker could have waited in the dark, learned the language of that parking lot's shadows, and timed the moment when a key meets a lock. The bent key would fit this story. The scattered belongings would fit. The speed of it would fit. But stalkers leave trails of obsession. Letters, calls, sightings that resolve into patterns. Did we see enough of those? Or did we paint them in after? Theory 2. The acquaintance. Not a stranger. Someone who knew her, at least casually. Someone who could approach near silently without the suddenness that triggers a scream. If there was a conversation, it was short. If there was persuasion, it was quick. The parking lot suggests force. But a person she recognized could close distance faster than a stranger because trust edits all our instincts. If this is true, why has no one cracked in all these years? Why has no confession slipped out in a bar at closing time? Or in a letter sent too late at night? Theory 3. The opportunist. A predator learns the city's edges and the hour's rhythms. They aren't after Jodi. They are after anyone who meets certain criteria. Alone, early, small enough to move, surprised enough to lose time. They arrive in a van because that's what predators on television drive. But maybe that's just our imagination creating props. If this is true, we might expect other incidents. Attempts, near misses, whispers in nearby towns. And yes, there are always rumors. But rumors are a sieve. Theory 4. The chain. A violent offender with a record in nearby states whose routes intersect with the city. They have done it before. They will do it again. Names were floated, some publicly, some in rooms where every word was recorded. None have borne the weight of charges. It doesn't erase the possibility. It only reminds us that sometimes truth resists the shape we need it to take. In every theory, certain facts remain. A car that waits, keys that show struggle, possessions that tell of haste, a city with a memory that refuses to fade. It is possible more than one person knows the truth. It is possible the truth is a simple sentence we have not yet given ourselves permission to say out loud. What would it take to push this from unsolved to answered? A new witness, a piece of physical evidence retested with newer science, a confession entrusted to someone who finally gets tired of guarding a monster. And sometimes, all it takes is one person deciding that the weight of silence is heavier than the weight of speaking. All stories like this arrive at the same difficult place. A city that learned how to go on, a newsroom that found other anchors for other mornings, families that carried a chair at every holiday, a community that refuses to let her name be a question mark. People remember her not as a headline, but as a neighbor who loved a good story, who chased storms so other people could find shelter, who believed that the right words at the right time can make a town feel like a family. Her absence has become part of the town's architecture, like a steeple or a water tower that guides you home. And yet the case lives. It lives in evidence boxes and in the breath of detectives who will never retire from the feeling that this one matters more than most. It lives in the way the city still scans white vans without meaning to. It lives in the way you just looked over your shoulder on a quiet morning, not for fear but for reverence. A promise to be careful, to notice, to speak if you know. Somewhere, in a drawer, there may be a photograph no one has ever turned over to police because they thought it wouldn't matter. Somewhere else, a person remembers a sentence said after midnight in a kitchen that felt wrong but wasn't repeated. Somewhere, a van, white or not, was sold and resold and now sits with a different life, quiet but still holding whatever stories metal tends to keep. We end where we started, at a morning where a phone rings, at a promise made to a newsroom, at a parking lot that knows the sound of a struggle, at a car that watched and could not speak. The sun rose that day as it always does. But for a certain part of Iowa, morning has never fully come back. What do you think happened? Leave your theory in the comments. Someone out there knows the truth. If you were drawn into the story, subscribe to Captain Justice True Stories. The more of us who listen, the louder the signal becomes. And if you know something, no matter how small, consider the courage it takes to place one more piece on the table. Sometimes the smallest detail is the key that finally turns.